Welcome to the Graduate School's Thesis and Dissertation Formatting Demonstration. This presentation is designed to aid you in the process of formatting your thesis or dissertation and should be used in conjunction with the format guide available on the Graduate School's website. In this video, several of the format requirements described in the format guide will be discussed in greater detail, and we will look at examples of what to do and what not to do as you format your thesis or dissertation. Please note that this demonstration does not describe every format requirement your thesis or dissertation must meet in order to be accepted. Refer to the format guide for the complete list of requirements. Before we get into the Graduate School's format requirements, please note that your thesis or dissertation must also adhere to an accepted style. The Graduate School does not mandate any particular style manual over another, though your department might. The Graduate School's format guide does not answer every potential style question you might have, and your style manual will be helpful to you as you go through the process of formatting your thesis or dissertation. Please note, however, that if you notice a conflict between the Graduate School's requirements and your style manual, the Graduate School's requirements should always be followed. The Graduate School's format guide describes all of the rules and requirements all theses and dissertations must meet in order to be accepted. No matter what degree you are earning or department you are in, your document must meet the requirements found in this guide in order for you to be eligible to graduate. The latest version of the format guide will always be available on the Graduate School's website. Now let's take a look at some of the general formatting rules found in the format guide that often give students difficulty, starting with the margin requirements. The rules are straightforward. Left and right margins will always be 1.25 inches, while the bottom margin will always be 1 inch. The top margin will be either 1 inch or 2 inches. On most pages, the top margin will be 1 inch. However, the first page of every section in your document will have a 2-inch top margin. This means that the top margin will be 2 inches on the first page of sections like the abstract, the table of contents, the references section, as well as the first page of every chapter. Note that only the first page of a section should have a 2-inch top margin. Every other page in that section will have a 1-inch top margin. Now that we know the rules, let's take a look at a few examples. Here we can see an example abstract. Note that the first page has a 2-inch top margin, while the second page has only a 1-inch top margin. Every other front matter section, such as the dedication, acknowledgments, table of contents, list of tables, and a list of figures, will follow that same pattern. Likewise, the first page of every chapter will have a 2-inch top margin, while every other page in that chapter will have a 1-inch top margin. The same rule applies to the references section and every appendix. Here we can see an example of what not to do. The first page of the chapter has a 2-inch top margin, which is correct, but the second page also has a 2-inch margin, which is incorrect. Only the first page of a chapter will have the 2-inch top margin. Every other page in the chapter will have a 1-inch top margin. It is important to note that the margin requirements apply to all content within your document, not just text. This means that tables, figures, charts, graphs, illustrations, and all other content must fit within the margins described in the format guide. The margin requirements apply to every page of the document, including in an appendix. In the example on the left, we can see that the figure extends too far into the right margin and will have to be resized so that it fits within the 1.25-inch margin. There will be 2 pagination sequences in your document. The front matter sections in the beginning of the document will display lowercase Roman numeral page numbers, while the rest of the document will display Arabic numerals, beginning with the first page of the introduction or the first chapter. Wherever your writing actually begins, that is where you should begin the Arabic numeral sequence at 1. The only page in the entire document that will not display a page number is the very first page, the title page. Every other page in the document must display a page number. You may choose from the following fonts when writing your thesis or dissertation: Arial, Calibri, Courier New, Palatino, Tahoma, Times New Roman. Please choose one of these fonts and consistently use only that font for all paragraphs, headings, subheadings, footnotes, endnotes, page numbers, table numbers and titles, figure numbers and captions, and all other text in your document. Don't switch back and forth between different fonts. All paragraphs must be size 12-point font and double-spaced. Headings and subheadings may be up to size 14-point. Footnotes and text within tables should be no smaller than size 10-point. Table titles and figure captions must be size 12-point and single-spaced. You have three options when you need to insert a table or a figure into your document. You must choose from these options for all tables and figures. Depending on the size of your tables and figures, it may be appropriate to use a combination of options 1 and 2. However, if you choose option 3, you should place all tables and figures at the end of each chapter. Don't include some in the middle of the chapter and others at the end. On the next several slides, we will look at a few examples of the right ways and wrong ways to implement these options. Your first option is to place the table or figure on the same page with your paragraphs. If you choose this option, do not wrap text around the sides of the table or figure. Just keep the text above or below. Here we can see the correct way to utilize the first option and the incorrect way. This first option is ideal for smaller tables and figures, but may not be suitable for items that take up most or all of a page. Your second option for inserting a table or figure into your document is to place the item on a page by itself, with no paragraphs or other content on that page. The only content on the page would be the table or figure, along with its number and title or caption. If you choose this option to insert tables and figures within a chapter, you'll have to be careful to arrange the text around the tables and figures so that you do not leave large vacant spaces on any of the pages before the tables or figures. On this slide, we can see an example of the correct way to insert tables and figures using option 2. The text runs continuously from page to page, and there are no large blank spaces among the paragraphs. This is an example of the incorrect way to utilize option number 2. There should not be a large vacant space on the page before the figure. Instead, simply rearrange the text so that the paragraph that begins on the page following the figure moves to the previous page and occupies that vacant space. Your third and final option is to place all tables and figures at the end of the chapter in which you make reference to them. The tables and figures should be placed in the order that you reference them in the chapter. Note that you cannot place all tables and figures at the end of the entire document, but you can place them at the end of each chapter. As far as the formatting process is concerned, option 3 is the easiest since you don't have to worry about arranging text around the tables or figures. Just place them in sequence at the end of the chapter. Every table and every figure must have a number. There is a specific numbering convention described in the format guide. Begin with the word table or the word figure, followed by the number of the chapter, a period, and the number of the table or figure within that chapter. Let's consider a few examples. The first table in chapter 1 should be numbered table 1.1. The second table in chapter 1 should be table 1.2. When you reach chapter 2, the first table in that chapter should be table 2.1, followed by table 2.2, and so on. By following this convention, every table in the document will have a unique number. The same convention applies to figures, but you will use the word figure instead of table when numbering figures. If you have any tables or figures in an appendix, simply use the appendix letter in place of the chapter number. If you need to include a table or figure that is too wide to fit within the margins of a portrait-oriented page, you have the option to rotate the page to landscape orientation. You should format landscape pages as if they are in portrait orientation, but the entire page should be rotated so that the content is readable from left to right on a screen. In other words, you shouldn't leave the page in portrait orientation with the content rotated on the page. This means that after the page has been rotated, the top and bottom margins of a landscape page will be 1.25 inches, while the left and right margins will be 1 inch. The page number on a landscape page should be centered 1/2 inch from the left edge of the page and rotated so that the bottom of the number is towards the left. This is an example of the incorrect way to insert landscape content into your document. You may not leave the page in portrait orientation and rotate the content. Here, the page has been rotated correctly, but this example is still wrong for 2 reasons. First, the margins of the top and bottom must be changed to 1.25 inches. Second, the page number cannot remain at the bottom of the page. It must be moved to the left side of the page and rotated so that the bottom of the number is towards the left. On this slide, we can see an example of a properly formatted landscape page. The text is readable from left to right on the screen, the page number has been moved and rotated appropriately, and the margins have been adjusted so that they are consistent with the portrait-oriented pages. Now that we have covered several of the general formatting issues, let's get into some section-specific information. Here we can see the correct order in which the various sections of your thesis or dissertation should be organized, starting with the title page at the very beginning and going all the way through the appendix at the very end. Some of the sections are optional and may not appear in your document. Remember that this video is only intended to discuss some of the format requirements that students frequently have trouble with. So always refer to the format guide on the Graduate School website for the full list of format rules for every section in your thesis or dissertation. Every thesis and dissertation must have a title page, and the format guide has strict requirements for this section. The guide describes the specific language, spacing, and centering requirements for the title page, and we can see an example of that here. No matter what style manual you are using, your title page will be very similar to this example. All of the text on the title page should be both horizontally and vertically centered. This means that there should be the same amount of blank space above the text as below the text. The title itself should be single-spaced if it is longer than a single line. Include 1 blank space below the title, then include the word by followed by another blank space below that. Next, you'll include your name on a line by itself. You are required to include every previously earned bachelor and higher degree on that title page, but you should not include any associate degree or certificate. When inserting your previously earned degrees on the title page, do not include the major or concentration with the name of the degree, and do not abbreviate the degree name. Below the name of the previously earned degree, you should include the name of the institution that granted the degree and the year you received it. Do not include the name of the country where that institution is located. Do not abbreviate the name of the institution, and do not include the name of the department within the institution. Always type out the full name of the degree and the institution as they appear on your transcript or diploma. Single space within the previously earned degree, but double space between them if you have more than one. This space on the title page is only for previously earned degrees, so don't include the degree you are currently earning. We'll get to that in a moment. After your last previously earned degree, you should insert a solid black line on the page. This line should be centered. Below the solid line, you must include the information that you see here. The text in black must be exactly the same on your title page, while the text in red should be modified to reflect your information. Do not abbreviate the name of the degree. For example, you would type out Doctor of Philosophy instead of PhD. A dissertation will have a major professor and committee member, while a thesis will have a director of thesis and reader. Do not include any titles or degrees with the names on the title page, such as Doctor or PhD. The last text on the title page will always be the dean's information, exactly as it is presented here. The next page is the copyright page, and this is an optional section. If you choose to include this page, the copyright notice should be centered approximately 2 inches from the bottom of the page. This example displays an all rights reserved notice, but you are free to include some other type of notice here, such as a Creative Commons license. Include the year of your graduation, but not the month or term. Type your name on this page exactly how you typed it on the title page. These next sections will all follow a similar pattern. The dedication, acknowledgments, and preface are optional, but the abstract is required. In our sample, you'll notice that the major headings are in all caps and centered. Your style manual may tell you to do something different, and that's okay. For instance, your style manual might want the major headings to be aligned along the left margin and not be in all caps. The important thing is that you are consistent. Just be sure to choose one style for the major headings and apply that style throughout the document. Your document must have a table of contents, and you will need to include most major headings as entries in the table of contents. The sections you will not include are the title page, the copyright page, and the table of contents itself. Otherwise, every major heading needs to be included. You must include each chapter as an entry in the table of contents, but you are not required to include any subsections within the chapters. If you wish, you may include the first level of subdivision within the chapters in the table of contents, but the easiest thing to do would be to just include the chapters and not include any of the subsections within them. Each entry in the table of contents must be aligned on the left margin, but if you decide to include subsections within the chapters, you should indent those. Every page number must be aligned exactly along the right 1.25-inch margin, and you must include the line of periods connecting each entry to its page number. This line of periods is called a leader, and you should use your word processor's function for inserting a leader. Don't try to press the period key all the way across the page, because that won't work, and the page numbers won't align properly. Double space between each entry in the table of contents, but single space within entries that are longer than one line. This is an example of a properly formatted table of contents. Just to remind you of the margin requirements, if your table of contents is longer than one page, then only the first page will have a 2-inch top margin, while every other page will have a 1-inch top margin. In this example, we included several possible names for the references section, but you should choose the one recommended by your style manual and include only that heading. Every entry in the table of contents should use the exact same language that appears on the indicated page within your chapters. The headings must be exactly the same both in the table of contents and at the beginning of that chapter or section. If you have more than 3 tables in your document, you must include a list of tables in the front matter. Likewise, for the list of figures, if you have more than 3 figures, you must have the list. If you have 3 or fewer, these lists are optional. These lists follow the same rules regarding margins, spacing, alignment, and the leader that we just saw for the table of contents. These are examples of the list of tables and list of figures. Note that all tables and figures in your document must be included as entries in the list, even those in an appendix. Both the list of symbols and list of abbreviations are completely optional, but if you choose to include these sections, be sure to follow the rules set out in the format guide. The list of abbreviations is the last page that will display a lowercase Roman numeral page number. After this page, all pages will display Arabic numerals. This is the point in your document when your writing begins. From this point forward, number all pages with Arabic numerals. Each chapter heading should begin with the word chapter, followed by the chapter number and the descriptive title of the chapter. The first page of each chapter will have a 2-inch top margin, but that is the only page in the entire chapter that will have a 2-inch top margin. Every other page in the chapter will have a 1-inch top margin. Every chapter must begin on a new page, but subsections within the chapters will not begin on a new page. You should also avoid including widows and orphans in your document. If a subheading within the chapter happens to fall at the bottom of a page, simply move that subheading to the top of the next page. You must include references in your document. References sections vary depending on which style manual you are using. Your style manual should tell you things like what this section should be titled, the proper order of the information within your citations, whether references should be alphabetized or numbered, whether to single space or double space, and where the references will be located within your document. Most styles will include a cumulative references section at the end of the document, but there are a few styles that want a list at the end of each chapter. The page numbers in your references section will continue the same Arabic numeral sequence you used in the chapters. Don't start a new numbering sequence and don't use Roman numerals to number these pages. Including an appendix is optional, but if you need to include them, they will always be the very last sections of your document. Each appendix will have a letter designation. The first appendix will be Appendix A. The second will be Appendix B, and so on. Each appendix also must have a title describing the contents. Format the appendix headings exactly like the chapter headings and other major headings in the document. The margins requirements we saw earlier still apply in an appendix. The first page of each appendix will have a 2-inch top margin, while every other page has a 1-inch top margin, and all content in the appendix must fit within the left and right 1.25-inch margins. Just as we saw for the references section, the pages in an appendix will be numbered with Arabic numerals. Thank you for viewing this demonstration. We hope that it helps you avoid some of the frequently encountered issues that graduate students run into when formatting their theses and dissertations. For the full list of format requirements, please review the format guide available on the Graduate School's website.